Hello, how you going? In this short video we're going to take a look at another of Tolkien's remarkable settings, first seen in the Fellowship of the Ring, the setting of Buckland, which is an outlying part of the Shire on its eastern borders, adjoining the Old Forest. So spoiler alert, when Frodo, Pippin and Samwise Gamgee set out in the book The Making for Buckland, this is where Frodo has told people he is moving to. In fact, Frodo intends to leave the Shire carrying the One Ring to Rivendell as instructed by Gandalf. Merry Brandybuck, their friend, a Bucklander, is due to meet them at the Buckleberry Ferry so that they can cross over into Buckland. In the movie, things happen a little differently. Initially, it's Sam and Frodo who set out, as you can see in the picture in the slide. But in the book, it is Merry, Pippin and Frodo as seen in this beautiful artwork. I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet and pay my respect to elders past and present, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. So, Buckland, which I've always been very fond of. This is what the master of narrative JRR Tolkien has to say about Buckland, which has not been on our radar up until now. It is not mentioned in The Hobbit. So I'm just going to read an extract from the book. Here we go. Long ago, Gorhendad Oldbuck, head of the Oldbuck family, one of the oldest in the Marish or indeed in the Shire, had crossed the river, which was the original boundary of the land eastwards. He built and excavated Brandy Hall, changed his name to Brandybuck, and settled down to become master of what was virtually a small independent country. His family grew, and after his days continued to grow until Brandy Hall occupied the whole of the low hill and had 3 large front doors, many side doors, and about 100 windows. The Brandybucks and their numerous dependents then began to burrow and later to build all round about. That was the origin of Buckland, a thickly inhabited strip between the river and the Old Forest, a sort of colony from the Shire. Its chief village was Buckleberry, clustering in the banks and slopes behind Brandy Hall. The people in the Marish were friendly with the Bucklanders, and the authority of the master of the hall, as the head of the Brandybuck family was called, was still acknowledged by the farmers between Stock and Rushy. But most of the folk of the Old Shire regarded the Bucklanders as peculiar, half foreigners as it were, though as a matter of fact they were not very different from the other hobbits of the Four Farthings, except in one point: they were fond of boats, and some of them could swim. Their land was originally unprotected from the east, but on that side they had built a hedge, the High Hay. It had been planted many generations ago, and was now thick and tall, for it was constantly tended. It ran all the way from the Brandywine Bridge in a big loop, curving away from the river to Hayes End, where the Withy Windle flowed out of the forest into the Brandywine. Well over 20 miles from end to end. But of course it was not a complete protection. The forest drew close to the hedge in many places. The Bucklanders kept their doors locked after dark, and that also was not unusual in the Shire. And we switch back to the narrative now. As they travel into Buckland, the ferry boat moves slowly across the water. The Buckland shore drew nearer. Sam was the only member of the party who had not been over the river before. He had a strange feeling as the slow gurgling stream slipped by. His old life lay behind in the mists. Dark adventure lay in front. So that's just an extract from the chapter. I have always thought it's a remarkable bit of world building. It sounds real, it's detailed, it's specific, and it's plausible, but it's also altogether different. It also impresses me that Tolkien used what's called omniscient third-party narration so easily. He's not bothered at this point on the show don't tell rule of modern fiction, although he does use this effectively in many other places. He has filled in a piece of the map for us, whilst also concluding with returning us to the narrative as the hobbits cross the river with Merry into Buckland, where they stay the night before preparing for their adventure into the old forest and into the future. Already they've been chased by black riders, but for a night at least they can gather their thoughts before they set out again into the old forest. Much as I loved the film of the Fellowship of the Ring and all the Lord of the Rings films, it was a pity that there were some gaps and jumps in the narrative around this point when you've read the book. So it is great news that Stephen Colbert is aiming to co-write a new film based on the first chapters of The Lord of the Rings, and hopefully he will give Buckland a good chunk of attention. So that's just my short postcard, if you like, from Buckland. I'm hoping to do some more of this about other aspects of Tolkien's world as we go along. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.